The NFC East seems to now have a completed list of quarterback and wide receiver one tandems where you go across with the Dallas Cowboys between Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, the Washington Commanders with Carson Wentz and Terry McLaurin, if he so happens to get paid. The Giants, well, that's a different conversation because I don't necessarily believe in Kenny Golladay. But now, Jalen Hurts and, well, A.J. Brown are entering the table and trying to set the bar amongst the rest of the division. And you can arguably say the Eagles have two number one receivers if you add Devontae Smith into the mix. But with that being said, between these two best friends, where does the bar get ultimately set and what they can become for the regular season? Good evening, Bird brothers and sisters. What is up? Lindy Endzone is in for the touchdown, taking the lead for the Philadelphia Eagles. One video at a time. Yes, what is up, everybody? Well, how to really start this video off? Well, I can tell you that I'm very excited for tomorrow's upcoming live stream in Touchdown Talk, making a grand return with episode 16. And, episode 15 was last done with Coach Dante, and that was over about a month ago. So with that, episode 16 is going to be huge. Philly Mike, Philly Talk Podcast is stopping by with me to talk some birds. You guys already know the deal. A much anticipated presentation coming your way. So do be sure to get your notifications prepared for that one. Linc'd In podcast as well, coming up this Friday for episode 7. We're already approaching 10 episodes between Philly Jim and I. Again, big shout out for me being a part of the Sideline Sports Network and them, Philly Jim, making this possible, and me being a part of that podcast. It has been a blast. So aside from the podcast, of course, like I always say, the grind does not stop over here. So being that I am on my continued quest, 300 is the next milestone for me. And if you want to be a part of the End Zone fam, easiest way is the subscription. Well, if I'm good enough for 10 minutes of your day in terms of entertainment, that is. But like button, notification bell, you already know the deal. All that being said, well, let's get into this conversation, shall we? Well, to me, the intangible with the best friend connection between A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts, it sparks in my mind a time ago with another quarterback and receiver tandem that the Eagles have witnessed for a few years. They have become best friends over time, and this said tight end / receiver was used. Well, a lot of people used to joke as him being the security blanket because, well, when you're one of the best tight ends in football, it's kind of hard not to target them. And I think this is going to go the same way with A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts, much like it used to be with, yes, Carson Wentz and Zach Ertz. However, I think it's going to be a different situation. Now, reason being is, well, earlier in the beginning, Carson really didn't have much, aside from Ertz. You had your Alshon Jeffries, you had your Torrey Smiths, and you had those guys and whatnot during the Super Bowl run. 2018, 2019 comes along. The roster around seems to diminish a little bit, and it wasn't until 2018, 2019 where you see a guy like Dallas Goedert coming into the fold, and while the rest of these playmakers are around Carson, he he always seemed to defer to Zach Ertz because of their continued strong connection that they had built between the two of them. And it seemed that, well, Zach was always in the right place at the right time. Fantastic route runner, reliable with his hands. Those two were on point constantly. They never really seemed to have a lot of miscommunication. So now when we direct our attention to Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, well, where's the bar going to actually be set for them? Aside from them being best friends and assuming that the chemistry is gonna go from the practice field to an NFL regular season game. It's not exactly going to work that way. They got to get their reps through training camp and preseason games, so on and so forth, in order to really, tie themselves into each other and be on the same page. But nonetheless, when you do have that extra intangible in there, it does make a big difference. So I had to go back and really assess the situation in which A.J. Brown was coming from, because with that, I had to see how good of a quarterback Ryan Tannehill was for A.J. in order to try and replicate that kind of production that we hope to see between him and Jalen Hurts. And, well, aside from King Henry, who was averaging 117 rushing yards a game for 8 games up until he got hurt, when you looked at the receiving core for the Titans, it pretty much really comprised of A.J. Brown, who played 13 games, and that's something that Eagles fans are, they're going to have some sort of concern about, although the Eagles themselves aren't really all that concerned because of the deal that they gave A.J. So aside from him playing 13 games, you had Nick Westbrook-Akine and Julio Jones were the next two leading receivers on that football team, respectively. I think they, between the two of them, one of them had about 400, just under 440, and the other had close to 480. Whereas A.J. Brown in 13 games had about 870 receiving yards. The only thing and what I'm getting into is the fact of two things I think that need to be cleaned up in order for this tandem to work. Number one, AJ needs to work on his catches to targets ratio a little bit. So in 13 games, he had 105 targets, 63 of those were caught. So catch percentage is not all that great, about 66% or so, 60 to 66%. Whereas when you look at Ryan Tannehill as a passer, he had about a 67% completion percentage. 21 touchdowns to 14 interceptions. He got sacked 47 times. So it's not like he was careful with the football. There was some security issues there, some errant throws, miscommunication. His offensive line wasn't the most sufficient in protection, hence the sack numbers, whereas you take Jalen Hurts and he was only sacked 26 times. So there's a difference of 21 between the two of them. But where the main difference lies in assessing the situation is, to me, I do not think it's far-fetched that we would hope to have a completion percentage of at least 65% out of Hurts. I think to get the most out of A.J. Brown, there needs to be some sort of accuracy property to a quarterback. And in terms of Hurts, with him being a 61 completion percentage last year, QBR of about 49 to Tannehill's 56. Yeah, I think we see where the improvements ultimately lie. One outlier I will say, though, is the Titans were not built with a receiving core that had at least two number one receivers. And yes, I don't really include Julio Jones in that mix. He's on the back end of his career. Multiple hamstring issues, just couldn't stay healthy. Whereas you take A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith as a pair, two receivers under 25 years old, healthy, ready to go, despite two knee scopes from A.J., but besides the point, that's where a little bit of the difference lies between the Titans offense and the Eagles offense, the way that they're currently built. So really, there's only one football, and the Eagles have plenty of receivers that are capable of receiving that football. When you think of the top guys in Dallas Goedert, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins, Zach Pascal, maybe getting some of those targets in certain packages. You never know. There isn't a definitive number one go-to guy constantly for the Eagles, and that is that's a good thing. You want at least more than one weapon that the defense has to respect, that they have to account for. The Titans, well, they didn't really have much of that. It was either Derrick Henry or A.J. Brown and a little bit of Julio Jones. But, well, when your run game is that dominant, sometimes it's enough. The Eagles, while they were number one last year, they had multiple guys doing all the damage as opposed to just one for the Titans. And this isn't to discredit a guy like Deontay Foreman, the number two back, who had 550 yards respectively, in terms of running the football. But I think you guys, at this point, I think you have an idea on where I'm going. So with that said, I would like to know your thoughts in the comments on how you feel of my opinion in where A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts could potentially be when stacked up with the rest of the division. And with that, wow, where do I put them? It's kind of tough. I'm not going to lie. It's kind of tough. Aside from two unknowns, and those unknowns being Washington and the New York Giants, I think it's going to be a fight for the number one tandem. Yeah, I do definitely think it will be. It'll be between Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb versus Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. Or if Devontae Smith wants to get into that mix. That's one advantage the Eagles have over the rest of the division. I don't think the rest of the division can say that they have two number one quality type receivers. So, like I said, we'll see what happens, but I do believe it's going to be a fight for the number one spot between Dallas and Philly, much like the prediction for the division winner, although a lot of us are pretty confident that the Eagles will take this division, although I think it'll be decided by one game in terms of wins for their regular season records. So, enough of me babbling on. But with that said, yeah, let me know your thoughts down in the comments on the whole ordeal here. With what do we ultimately expect or hope to see out of Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown as a tandem? All the videos are out right now of them working together, and how will it ultimately translate to the football field? So, I'm going to get it out of here, everybody. This has been Lindy. With that said, take care, Fly Eagles Fly. You already know the deal, and I will see you next time.